What if the person who has remained quietly present in your thoughts is no longer standing where they once were emotionally? What if, while everything on the outside has appeared unchanged, something irreversible has already taken place deep within them? Most people spend their lives waiting for obvious signs. They expect life-changing moments to arrive with dramatic conversations, unexpected messages, or unmistakable declarations that leave no room for doubt. Yet the deepest transformations almost never unfold that way. The decisions that permanently redirect a person's life are rarely made in front of other people. They are made in silence, far beneath the surface of conscious awareness, where old fears collide with forgotten hopes, where painful memories meet undeniable truths, and where the heart slowly grows stronger than the voice of resistance. At this very moment, someone connected to your life may be experiencing exactly that kind of transformation. Not because circumstances suddenly became perfect, not because every obstacle has disappeared, but because something within them has reached the point where continuing to deny what they feel demands more energy than finally acknowledging it. This kind of realization does not arrive overnight. It develops quietly. Long before a person consciously admits the truth, their unconscious mind has already begun assembling it. Seemingly unrelated memories start connecting. Conversations they once dismissed begin returning with unexpected clarity. Small moments they believed had no lasting significance suddenly reveal meanings they were never able to recognize before. To everyone else, it may eventually look like a sudden decision, but nothing about it is sudden. It is the final step in a process that has been unfolding beneath the surface for far longer than anyone realizes. When emotions reach the deepest layers of the psyche, logic eventually discovers its own limits. A person can repeat practical explanations hundreds of times. They can convince themselves that the timing is wrong, that the distance is too great, that too much damage has already been done, that moving forward carries too much uncertainty. Those explanations may satisfy the conscious mind for a while, but they rarely silence the unconscious. Because the unconscious does not measure truth through convenience. It measures truth through emotional significance. The more meaningful an experience becomes, the more impossible it is to erase completely. That is why certain people continue appearing in dreams long after they are gone. Why particular memories remain vivid years later, while countless ordinary moments disappear forever. Why someone can build an entirely new routine and still find themselves unexpectedly thinking about one person they believed they had already left behind. These recurring experiences are not random interruptions. They are invitations. The unconscious is constantly attempting to complete what the conscious mind continues postponing. For someone who has spent months or perhaps years avoiding their emotions, this creates enormous internal pressure. One part of them continues insisting everything should remain exactly as it is. Another part grows increasingly unwilling to accept a life built around emotional avoidance. That conflict cannot continue indefinitely. Eventually, something begins to shift. Instead of immediately pushing difficult thoughts away, they pause. Instead of distracting themselves, they become curious. Instead of automatically rejecting vulnerable feelings, they begin asking why those feelings have refused to disappear. This is where genuine psychological transformation begins. Not when fear disappears, but when truth becomes more compelling than fear itself. During this period, familiar emotional defenses gradually weaken. The explanations that once sounded convincing begin feeling strangely incomplete. The certainty they once relied upon starts giving way to uncomfortable questions. What if I misunderstood everything? What if I walked away from something I never truly understood? What if I have been protecting myself from the very experience capable of changing me? These questions rarely arrive all at once. They emerge slowly, quietly, often during ordinary moments. Driving home after work, lying awake long after midnight, walking through places that unexpectedly awaken forgotten emotions. The conscious mind may still attempt to regain control. It may insist that these thoughts are temporary, that they will disappear if ignored long enough. Yet each attempt at suppression only strengthens what remains unresolved, because emotions that are consistently denied rarely vanish. They simply move deeper into the unconscious, where they continue influencing perception, decisions, relationships, and behavior without asking permission. Eventually, the individual notices something impossible to ignore. Their emotional reactions no longer match the story they have been telling themselves. Someone mentions your name, their heartbeat changes. They hear a familiar song. Old memories return with remarkable clarity. A place, a scent, a season, or a simple conversation suddenly carries unexpected emotional weight. These moments reveal something important. The connection never truly disappeared. It simply existed beneath layers of fear, distraction, and self-protection. Realizing this is rarely comfortable. In fact, it often feels deeply unsettling, because accepting emotional truth usually requires questioning the identity a person has spent years constructing. Perhaps they believed vulnerability was weakness. Perhaps independence became a shield against disappointment. Perhaps control felt safer than uncertainty. Yet profound emotional connections possess an unusual ability. They expose every protective structure that no longer serves genuine growth. Walls that once offered safety gradually begin resembling prisons. Distance that once provided comfort begins creating loneliness instead. Silence that once felt necessary begins feeling unbearably heavy. For the first time, they recognize that avoiding the connection has not created peace. It has only prolonged conflict, and that realization changes everything. Not because every external circumstance immediately transforms, but because the direction of their inner world has fundamentally shifted. Once the unconscious and conscious mind begin moving toward the same truth, an entirely different psychological process begins unfolding. Energy that was previously consumed by resistance becomes available for clarity. Confusion slowly gives way to acceptance. Not perfect certainty, not complete understanding, but honest recognition, the kind that cannot easily be reversed. From that moment forward, every decision they make begins reflecting this deeper awareness, even if outward actions still require time. Because authentic transformation always begins within long before it becomes visible without. The world may continue seeing silence, yet beneath that silence, an entirely different future is already taking shape. That is why the most meaningful turning points in a person's life are almost invisible. while they are happening. From the outside, they continue living as though nothing has changed. They go to work, they answer messages, they smile during conversations, they complete ordinary routines. Yet beneath that familiar surface, an entirely different reality is unfolding. The old version of themselves is slowly losing its influence, not through force, not through sudden inspiration, but through repeated encounters with a truth that refuses to disappear. This is the stage where the unconscious mind becomes impossible to outrun. Every attempt to return to emotional certainty begins producing the opposite result. The explanations that once felt reassuring suddenly sound hollow. The distractions that once provided relief no longer last. Even moments of temporary peace feel incomplete because something deeper continues asking for attention. That deeper voice does not speak through arguments. It speaks through persistence. It quietly returns during moments of stillness. It appears in dreams that feel strangely vivid. It resurfaces during ordinary afternoons when nothing unusual should be happening. Without warning, a familiar memory arrives carrying an emotional intensity that seems impossible to explain. The conscious mind immediately tries to dismiss it. It doesn't mean anything. I've already moved on. I've thought about this before. Yet those explanations begin losing their strength because the unconscious is no longer asking permission to be heard. It has already decided that the truth deserves to reach the surface. This creates one of the most significant psychological shifts a person can experience. The battle is no longer between two different people. It becomes a battle within themselves. One part desperately wants to remain inside the safety of familiar patterns. The other recognizes that safety has quietly become another form of emotional imprisonment. This conflict is exhausting. It drains attention. It steals sleep. It turns simple moments into endless reflection. Questions begin replacing certainty. What if fear has been making every important decision? What if avoiding vulnerability has also meant avoiding genuine happiness? What if the greatest mistake was never feeling too deeply, but pretending not to feel at all? These realizations rarely arrive with complete clarity. Instead, they gather slowly. Like sunrise gradually replacing darkness, each insight reveals another. Each honest reflection weakens another old belief. Eventually, they begin recognizing something they were never prepared to admit. Their greatest obstacle was never distance. It was resistance. Resistance to uncertainty. Resistance to emotional exposure. Resistance to allowing another human being to matter as much as you came to matter. Once that realization settles into the deeper layers of awareness, the emotional landscape begins changing. The need to constantly analyze every possibility starts fading. The endless arguments inside their own mind become quieter. Not because every answer has appeared, but because they finally understand they have been asking the wrong questions. The real question was never whether the connection existed. The connection has continued, revealing itself in countless subtle ways. The real question has always been whether they were willing to stop running from it. That answer is beginning to change. Something remarkable happens when a person finally accepts an emotional truth they have resisted for a very long time. Their energy reorganizes itself. Their priorities shift almost without conscious effort. The things that once consumed all of their attention begin losing importance. Achievements feel incomplete without emotional fulfillment. Distractions become less satisfying. Even familiar relationships begin reflecting parts of themselves they had never noticed before. Growth always changes perception before it changes circumstances. That is why people often describe feeling different long before anything in their external world actually changes. The transformation begins inside. Only later does the outer world slowly reorganize around it. For someone experiencing this process, the past also begins looking different. Moments they once misunderstood suddenly become clear. Conversations gain new meaning. Silence is interpreted through an entirely different lens. Instead of remembering only disappointment, they begin recognizing missed opportunities. Instead of focusing exclusively on what went wrong, they start seeing the fears that influenced every decision. Compassion quietly replaces blame. Understanding replaces confusion. Acceptance begins replacing resistance. This is not emotional weakness, it is emotional maturity. Because genuine growth never asks a person to erase the past. It asks them to understand it honestly. As that understanding deepens, another important change begins taking place. Hope slowly returns. Not unrealistic fantasy, not wishful thinking, but the quiet confidence that living honestly is no longer something to fear. The future stops feeling like a threat. It begins feeling like an opportunity. This is the point where momentum becomes almost impossible to stop. The old identity continues fading. The new one grows stronger with every honest decision. Even moments of doubt cannot fully restore the old patterns because the deeper mind already knows too much. Awareness changes everything. Once you truly see yourself, you cannot become blind again. Once emotional truth has been fully acknowledged, pretending becomes exhausting. This is why some decisions never need to be announced. They have already transformed the person making them, long before anyone else notices, long before words are spoken, long before visible action finally appears. Everything essential has already changed. Perhaps that is exactly where this story is now. Not at the beginning, not even in the middle, but at the quiet moment where the invisible becomes stronger than the visible, where inner certainty becomes more powerful than outer hesitation, where the heart finally stops negotiating with fear. Because every meaningful transformation eventually reaches the same destination. The moment when truth no longer asks for permission, it simply becomes the direction forward. If this message found you today, perhaps the greatest lesson is not to chase what cannot yet be seen. Real transformation unfolds in its own time. The deepest roots always grow beneath the surface, before anyone witnesses the tree. Trust the process that cannot yet be measured. Honor the peace that comes from remaining grounded in your own worth. Allow what is genuinely meant for your life to reveal itself naturally, rather than forcing answers before they are ready. And if this profound reflection gave your intuition the confirmation it has quietly been searching for, I want you to go down to the comments and declare your own clarity. Then click the video appearing on your screen. It will guide you through the psychological boundaries that protect your peace as every hidden truth continues to unfold. Stay grounded, honor your value, and keep moving forward.